Welcome to the Well Woman Show, where we interview women executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
And you're listening to the Well Woman Show,
where motivated women achieve fulfillment and well-being.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
Take time for myself by coming to things like Well Woman Drinks.
To be accepting of myself no matter what. Step away from judgment as much as possible.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
You're going to be in for a good ride. I don't regret anything. Everything I've ever done, I've learned from it, one way or another, good or bad.
Being a little bit selfish for yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first and then give what's left.
I'm a woman. I would prefer to tell my own story. My story, though it's very personal, is universal.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show. And now your host, Giovanna Rossi.
Hi, Giovanna Rossi here, and welcome to another episode of The Well Woman Show, where I interview women leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs about their lives and their road to becoming and being who they are today. Do you ever find yourself overwhelmed with your responsibilities, and it seems like you'll never get it all done? Well, you're not alone. We all need to remember to use our superpowers, the ones we already have but don't use all the time, and take advice and wisdom from one another. Towards the end of the show, in a segment called Superpowers for Success, I ask my guest about her superpowers, and the answers will give you the strength, perspective, and power to keep on being the well woman you are. I'm so happy you're here, so thanks for tuning in. Today's topic is how to harness and use your feminine power, and hopefully by the end of the show, you'll be inspired to access your feminine power, develop confidence to get your voice heard, and make a great impression, and remember that you are powerful and influential. My guest today is the Art of Feminine Presence instructor, Michelle Baca. Michelle is a speaker, best-selling author, and confidence coach, helping people develop confidence, charisma, power, and persuasion. As a consultant with Convergence Coaching, she aids leaders in achieving success by helping them develop and implement leadership, succession, marketing, and training and development plans. Michelle teaches entrepreneurs and self-employed people how to develop a strong presence and public speaking skills so that they're always ready to make a great impression. Today, I talk with Michelle about how she went from being a shy, quiet person to being a successful and persuasive public speaker, how women can use their feminine presence to get ahead and make great impressions, and skills and tips for developing and exuding confidence. The free giveaway today is Create Your Own Home Court Advantage, a chapter that Michelle wrote in Jack Canfield's new book. I love the giveaway because it explains how you can be as comfortable, grounded, and confident as you are when you're at your best all the time. Now to my interview with Michelle. Okay, I'm speaking with Michelle Baca today. Welcome to the program, Michelle.
Thank you, Giovanna, and thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you on the show. Tell me, Michelle, what are you working on right now, and how does it impact women's lives?
Well, what I'm most excited about right now is something called the Art of Feminine Presence, which are classes and trainings designed especially to help women develop a powerful and magnetic presence. So I'm a level 2 certified instructor for the Art of Feminine Presence. And for me, it has been one of the most powerful set of practices that I've come across. And, I'm still a big believer in the power of positive thinking. And, I still love affirmations and all of that, but there's been something about really connecting with the body, and getting, out of my head and more into my body that's allowed me to just really dive into this work and be able to share it with women in, the most authentic way, that I feel that I have been able to do.
Okay, so I want to ask you about that because you've said some interesting things there. You said that it helps women with their powerful and magnetic presence. So what kind of women and in what situations do they need this presence?
It is really any time that you want to walk into a room and make a great impression. It's any time that you want to look and feel confident. I myself tend to weave it in with public speaking skills just because of my background and the fact that I tend to help people who have some nervousness or anxiety around public speaking. So for me, part of my story and how it's helped me is to further develop my confidence on stage and in front of groups of people. But what I tell people, is even if you think that you don't do public speaking, like we all do public speaking every single day. It might just be to 2 people or 1 person. It might be on the phone. You're still speaking in public. And those are all times that you want to make a good impression and that you want to make sure that you're articulate and that you're communicating with power and passion and persuasion. And that's what I found is, continuing to do these practices for me and the women that I work with. It just allows them that freedom to be so confident, so grounded and expressive that all of that can come through without having to really think about it, because I think that's where a lot of people get caught up, is when they get caught up in their heads and overthinking. And so this whole concept of showing up in a big, powerful, magnetic way is really about getting out of your head so that you can really allow people to see you and to communicate with them in a really honest way. And I think that's how we really develop connections.
Okay, so this could be good for someone going into a job interview, or just speaking, like if they're sit on a board of directors, or if they're going to actually go speak to a group in public. It could be for, any of those situations. I want to ask you about something you just mentioned. Well, in terms of the art of the feminine, say the title again.
Art of Feminine Presence.
Art of Feminine Presence. So is this only for women, or is it the feminine presence in men and women?
It is for women mostly. So all of the classes are only for women. So there aren't any men that are allowed to be in the small classes. So for example, I do class series where it's limited to 8 people, which is a very intimate setting, a great way for people to get feedback and to practice being in front of people. But, to really answer your question, no, men aren't allowed into those classes, but I do some, personal one-on-one work with men because a lot of the same concepts still apply, most of the practices. So for example, in the entire body of work, there are 44 practices. And so there are just a few, I would say, that are specific to women only. But there are a lot of the practices that can also help men to do all of the same things I'm talking about, develop high levels of confidence, really connect with their power center, look and feel more confident, all of that. But really for them, it's about connecting more with their masculine energy. But with anybody, it depends. It's just about having a healthy balance. So, in this work, it's not to say that, the masculine energy is bad and we want to bring out more of the feminine in the women, because we need them both, and they both have, really awesome benefits. And so the idea is to have both masculine and feminine energy, but not to be leaning too far towards one side. And that's one of the things that we find is that so many women out there, especially really driven women, somewhere along the way, they might have picked up that in order to compete with men and to be really successful, that they have to sort of match that energy, which is kind of this more masculine, driven energy. And in the pursuit of that, they lose, some touch with their feminine essence.
So that, to me, sounds a lot like something I talk to people about a lot, which is this idea that women need to act like men in order to compete in a man's world. Whereas what I try to do with the Well Woman Show and in my work is really change the world so that women and men are successful as they are, and they don't have to try to act like men in order to be successful. So does that come into play?
Absolutely. And that's been my experience too for over, 8.5, almost 9 years now too. I've done a lot of work with professional service firms and CPA firms in particular. And usually at the partnership level, even still now, it's very male dominated industry. And so sometimes, I do see that some of the women that are really successful, sometimes unfortunately they lose kind of that feminine energy, and in doing that, they lose some of their edge. So I absolutely agree with you that you can be both. You can be feminine and powerful. And that's actually the title of my mentor's book. So my mentor's name is Rachel Jane Groover, and she wrote this fantastic book called Powerful and Feminine.
Okay, and I think when I think about public speaking and appearing confident and articulate and that kind of thing, it sort of comes back to knowing yourself. Because I think when you know yourself, or at least when you're working on it, you're more in touch with how you really feel about whatever you're talking about. You can connect more inside, and then you're not so much in your head and you're feeling what you're saying.
Right.
Is that part of this?
Yes, it's definitely part of it. And in fact, I just, day before yesterday, I was at New Mexico Highlands University, and I delivered a keynote presentation there for their Cowgirl Way luncheon, which was a luncheon honoring all the female athletes there at the university. And they were giving away a couple of scholarships there. And so I went to talk to them about exactly that, because I know that they know how to get into their high performance zone when it comes to athletics. But I thought I want to come and talk to them about some of the instances that you mentioned, like interviews. I was like, I want them to know that they can use what they already know about getting into an athletic kind of zone and apply that to these kinds of situations if they would just take a couple of minutes before they're going to walk into that interview, before they go address the media, or, before they give a TED Talk, something like that, to go and say, if you just have a pre-performance ritual for every high-stakes event in your life, it makes a real difference.
Ooh, I like it. Pre-performance ritual.
Yes. So so your question was really about, getting more into your body to be more present. So I just went there. My intention was to remind them, when you're out there playing sports, just think about the fact that you can't be in your head thinking, I have to put this foot in front of the other and I have to move left and then move right. Like, you really have to rely on your instincts and your intuition, and you have to trust that. And so part of my message was, why don't, most people take that philosophy out into those situations where they're engaged in interpersonal interaction? So,
and why don't we?
The biggest reason is that we get into what I like to call our head bubble, which is this space, it's like this imaginary space above and in front of your forehead a little bit. It's kind of like one of those dialogue boxes, in the cartoons or comic strips. But that's where we go when we start overthinking and overanalyzing as we're talking. We're saying, oh no, what are they thinking of me? What should I say next? And we just, we get ahead of ourselves and we get stuck in our head. And so I think that's the number one biggest problem that prevents people from being totally in the moment, totally in their bodies, and completely in their power.
And I'm really interested in this idea of a pre-performance ritual. What is that? And can you describe how someone could create one of those?
For me, so part of what I did, just using that keynote for the female athletes as an example, is I led them through a visualization that anybody can do in about 2 minutes. If they were to just, if you're about to go in somewhere, you can sit in your car. What I would do is I would put on, one of my favorite songs. I think music is so powerful. And I talk to the athletes about that because, I mean, you see athletes all the time listening to their headphones. It's a big deal when they have the song, that just gets them into that mindset. And for me, it's like I have a whole playlist, and some of them are the ones that I listen to when I'm doing my Art of Feminine Presence meditation, because it's kind of like muscle memory. If I was listening to that when I did that meditation and I felt so confident and so powerful, it's like all I have to do is put it back on, and it's like all these memories start coming back. It's sort of like when you smell something that reminds you of something, it just kind of brings all of that, kind of sensory awareness back, like it's there and it's real. So, sitting in your car, putting that song on, just closing your eyes and visualizing, that area of your body. So this is, a big part of the work that I do is connecting with what I refer to as your power center. If I'm talking to men or an audience that, maybe is a little bit more conservative or, not very woo-woo, I'll call it the power center. If I'm with a group of women or, very, very spiritually aware women, we might refer to it as the womb space. Mm-hmm. But either way, so it's, power center, womb space, but it's that area of your body that's, for women, it's about 3 inches below the navel. And for men, it's about 2.5 inches below the navel. So it's about really focusing energy on that area because it's powerful. All healing methodologies, martial artists, Zen practitioners, yogic practitioners, they speak of this space that they refer to as Dantian, which is that very space suspended in that pelvic region of your body that contains a lot of power. It's the storage place for endurance and stamina, creativity. And so it's, just about connecting with that space intentionally, directing energy towards there, just waking it up.
And so during the visualization, you would put your song on and then you would focus in on that power center.
Yes.
Okay. And what is your favorite song to meditate to when you do that?
I don't know that I have one song, but I have a playlist that maybe has about 25 songs, that I'll cycle through.
So give us an example.
They're all, I don't even know if I can pronounce them. A lot of them are, just, instrumental type of music. Especially in the beginning when I'm working with women to do the meditation, I find that having songs without words is more beneficial so that they don't get caught up in the words.
Right.
Eventually, once somebody gets more advanced in their practice, and now I do have, I'll listen to some songs with words but in the beginning especially.
It can be distracting.
Yeah, for this purpose.
Okay, so the pre-performance ritual could be like you put your song on, you do some visualization. What's next? Like if you only have a couple of minutes, what do you walk us through that?
Okay, so for example, I had a workshop, a half-day workshop that I did last weekend, and part of my promise to the women was I'm going to teach you the 3 feminine activation points so that if in a couple of minutes you wanted to, turn on, your light within you so that you could, walk into that room or walk into that interview, that this is something that you could do to allow you to shine, to stand out and attract the right kind of attention. Mm. And so this would come so this came after I established a foundation of understanding for how to connect with that power center. So just to give you some context, I'm not just saying, connect with your power center and expecting people to know how to do that. Right. So we went through an exercise to help them be able to first do that. And then I would just give them a reminder, connect here to your power center first, feel that, and then just feel the sensuality, in your hips, maybe lean over to one side so that, you can kind of feel that sort of movement, kind of flowy, watery feel in that, kind of power center area. And then just to also extend that light, up towards your heart and connect that heart space, because that softens it and really makes people more approachable and brings in that warmth. Because one of the things that I found is before I was introduced to the art of feminine presence, I had started studying and practicing Tantra, breathing techniques and power. And that, really allowed me to connect with that feminine power and energy. But it was so powerful and so strong. What I found was that when I was in that space, that it was almost, too much for people, like too intimidating. So it was like, because it's a lot of power when you connect with that and when you can express that and have it show up. But if it's not balanced out with some of this, warmth, so that people feel, also comfortable with you and not just like, whoa, what is this? So that's so that's the last piece of the 3 activation points is practicing, softening in that heart space and just kind of sending that light out and looking at people like, they're amazing, like the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen, because I really, and that's just so true. I figured like if you have an hour to sit down with anybody, it's like you can almost just really fall in love with anybody if you learn enough about them and about their story and what they've been through. Yeah. And so just to, remember that when you see someone and you connect with them and look into their eyes, which a lot of people are afraid to do or not used to doing. So, and it just kind of reminds me of, doing this work, whether it's public speaking or just speaking one-on-one. And you probably come across this where people have weird eye contact issues. And that's like a signal, if you notice that you like can't hold eye contact or you're looking at the ceiling, you're looking around, like what's going on there? You're probably in your head bubble and you're probably not in your body and you're not probably really present with that person.
Yeah, that is. And that's a definite sign, isn't it?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm always like, yeah.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily like something to blame people for or to judge them for. It's just that when you're in that headspace, you can't be in
it's just a practice of being with people. I mean, it's something that you don't think you would have to practice, but and I know that I've done a lot of work with Jack Canfield and his organization, and when in his training, which is called Breakthrough to Success, there's one exercise during that week where people do just literally sit across from each other and stare into each other's eyes. And this is like, I'm trying to think, I think he does it for 5 minutes straight.
Yeah. And 5 minutes sounds like, oh yeah, that's nothing, but it's a really long time when you do that.
Yeah. And it's for a lot of people, it's the most powerful part of the entire training is just learning how to be with someone with, not having to say anything, not having to do anything, not looking at your phone, not, looking over their head to see who else is coming, anything like that.
That's a big one. Michelle, I was actually going to ask you about the Jack Canfield piece, so I'm glad you brought it up. I wanted to ask you what how your work with him has impacted what you're doing now, or, how that's related. And just if you can tell us a little bit about your work with Jack Canfield.
I mean, it's been a huge part of, my journey and where I'm at now, because when I first went through his Train the Trainer program, that was maybe 2.5 years ago. And, going into that, I feel like, looking back now, I really didn't know how to be with people. And to, it was like, it's just been a lot of freedom to figure out how to be myself, kind of that same self with anybody that I'm with and not having to switch modes, because I just felt like sometimes I was this person, in this situation, and that's exhausting, and so going there and being able to have the opportunity to be in this space where you feel just like unconditional love and support, and you can just, be yourself and express yourself and feel comfortable, feel confident. That's how I walked away from my first training experience with him.
So do we switch our identities based on who we're talking to because we want to be accepted and loved in each situation?
I think that's probably one of the number one reasons. I think that's really a good point. Why we tend to do that. And I think it is. I think it does have a lot to do with wanting to be liked or wanting to be appropriate, in this situation. And like I said, it's tiring, to feel like you have to keep putting on a different suit every day.
Right.
Yeah.
So you ended up writing a chapter for his book. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the chapter is called Creating Your Own Home Court Advantage. And part of the reason that I was inspired to write that is because one thing that happens, during my experience at the Canfield training, and I hear this from attendees, the same story. It's like when you're there, it's amazing and you feel like you can do anything. And then it comes to the end of your time together and you start to get really sad because you're going to be leaving all of these people that you feel so amazing in their presence. And it's like you're going to go back home to real life. And so there tends to be like this big adjustment period where people, get kind of sad. You go back home and then it's like, oh, this is the real world. And all of a sudden I'm not surrounded by the most positive, inspiring people I've ever met in my life. And there are some negative people with some negative energy. And, how do I maintain this feeling? And so this, part of my intention was to create some tips and a set of practices for people so that they could keep that feeling of what it's like to, quote, play in your home court, where you feel like everything is familiar, you're comfortable, you're grounded, you're confident, you've got your fans, cheering you on in the stands, and to have that and be able to take it with you wherever you go. So it kind of comes back to how I was talking about with the music, kind of like this muscle memory thing. So I sometimes tell people, even in my workshops, let's just take a minute for you to just realize like exactly what you feel like in your body right now so that you can memorize this feeling. That way you can come back to it later in another situation and be able to use that. So that's part of the reason why I wrote it. And it's also beneficial, again, for anybody who needs or wants to engage in any kind of public speaking so that when you're up there, you feel like you're on your home court and you can speak, in a really powerful, authentic way when you're coming from that space. So that was the beginning because I felt like it led directly to the work I'm doing now with the Art of Feminine Presence, because sometimes I'll describe what it's like to do the practices in AFP, Art of Feminine Presence, as being able to take your comfort zone with you. So that's what I've been telling people lately is like, I'm tired of everybody telling us that we need to get out of our comfort zones in order to make big things happen and in order to do challenging and exciting things, because that, for most people, that just doesn't sound fun, getting out of your comfort zone. Like it sounds like it's going to be something icky and hard and, just unpleasant. So I tell people, imagine what it would be like if you could literally take your comfort zone with you wherever you went. And that's what the AFP practices are for me, is being able to, that's how I describe it now, is being able to take my comfort zone with me wherever I go.
Okay, Michelle, can you describe a time in your life when you weren't putting yourself first? You weren't taking care of yourself the way you probably now do and know that you need to?
I think it would have to be whenever I was doing things that I thought I was supposed to be doing, or whenever I was trying to do what was practical.
Can you give us an example?
I have a few examples. I mean, probably the first example that I would go to was, when I picked my major in college. I mean, I was the first person in my family to go to college. So I really just didn't even know what I was doing. Showing up, to orientation on the first day, like I didn't know what I was going to major in. And I heard the person leading the orientation say that MIS, or Management Information Systems, was one of the highest paying degree programs coming out of the university at that time. So based on that information, I said to myself, I want to make a lot of money. I'm going to pick MIS as my major. So I did. And I just never looked back, And so I went through 4 years of college pursuing my degree in MIS because I thought it was a good idea in my head and it would make me a lot of money, not because I liked it or cared about it or thought I would have any fun doing it. And so that, ended up getting me into a situation where I wasn't taking good care of myself. I had, after I graduated for about 5.5 years, I worked as a systems analyst and a computer programmer, and I had headaches every single day, and I thought something was wrong with me. I mean, I had MRIs, I had CAT scans, I went to neurologists, and I mean, it wasn't until I got out of that line of work and stopped doing something that I hated that they went away.
Oh, so it was because you were unhappy in your job that you were having showed up physically, which of course is a lot of times what happens.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what happened for me.
How did you make the shift? What did you do? How did you get out of it?
Well, I can't really take credit for getting myself out of it. It's like the universe pushed me out of it. The company I was working for at the time went bankrupt. It was based in San Francisco. It was right around the time, the big .com bust. And so the company went bankrupt. So at that point, of course, all of my coworkers were devastated. It's like, oh no, because it was a great company to work for. So everybody was really sad, except for me. I was actually really happy because it was like my excuse to get out of it. And I felt like this is my chance to not go get another job in this field. So I didn't, so after that, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I decided to hire a life coach to help me figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
Oh, wow. So that was a bold move.
Yeah. I mean, it did feel like, when I would tell people, I remember sitting at one, dinner party with friends and telling them I'm not going to go back into IT because I don't like it. And I just got the weirdest looks like, what do you mean? Like this, you got your degree in this, you're making a lot of money. Why would you want to start from scratch doing something else? So I do remember people, looking at me and reacting to me like I was crazy, but I couldn't picture it. I couldn't picture doing that, until I retired.
And so you hired a life coach and you have basically been pursuing that kind of thing ever since.
Yeah, ever since I started working with my coach, I was just really fascinated by this idea that you could have a job, being a coach to people. And it was like, by that point, I had started picking up every, personal development book that I could. And I would just, that's what I love to do.
And how long ago was that?
That was about, maybe 13, 14 years.
Yeah. And do you still have the same coach?
No. I've had several coaches and mentors within that time.
Yeah. Okay. And so we're moving into a segment called Superpowers for Success. So I just want to ask you several questions that we're going to go through them a little bit quicker.
Okay.
The first one is, what does success in life mean for you?
Success in life for me means being able to experience and pursue those things that you see other people doing and you're like, I wish I could do that. And like really believing that you can, like not having anything where you're like, oh, that's really great that she's doing that, but I can't do that. So having that, to be able to be in a place where you're like, anything that excites me or feels like it'll ignite joy in me, I feel like I could totally go pursue that.
That's great. And when, Michelle, did you know that you were really good at what you do?
This is pretty unexpected because it was actually at the funeral for my uncle. And I was asked to deliver the eulogy. And for me, it was really different because I think up until that point, even though I had given a ton of presentations and speeches, I never, up until that point, knew what it was like to speak to a group and have it not be about me, like all about me and wanting to impress people. And so really, my uncle Andy, gave me that gift, like being able to do that and feel like this is what it's like to really communicate with people just because you want to give the message. And for me, that was, honoring my uncle. And it wasn't at all about me. And that made me a better speaker. And having that experience, it was like the first and only time that a lot of my family members had ever seen me speak. And so afterwards, just hearing everybody, they were just like blown away. Like I had no idea, this is what you do. And, I just remember my husband and a couple of other family members saying, I had no idea how good you were. Like you really need to do more speaking. And it was a good acknowledgement for me. I guess I needed to hear that in order to keep moving forward.
So that was definitely external acknowledgement. And did you have an internal moment there of like, yeah, I kind of rock?
The internal moment was less about I rock, but more about, oh my gosh, like this is what it's really about. Like it's really not about me. Like having, because you can know, like for me, I knew in my head to prepare for a presentation, I should focus on how do I want people to walk away feeling. But up until then, I just felt like it was so more about me getting a good evaluation or them wanting to hire me again and, wanting people to say, oh, she's really good at what she does. And being able to transfer to, it's not about that. Like I just have this message and I have to get it out. And it's going to hit really hard and powerful with some people. And if there are some people that don't like it and don't like me, that's okay too. But I just have to do this because I know there are those people that need to hear this message right now.
Yeah. And what do you do when you are speaking to a group and it's like you don't feel like you're connecting or it's not resonating? I mean, how do you make adjustments like partway through, or do you just kind of keep going and then say, well, that was just that?
For the most part, I think if it were ever, and I've never had this happen where it looks like, I'm just way off or I totally need to switch directions, so I've never really had that happen, but I have had it happen where you have, the one or the couple of people that just, you can tell that they're either, not with you or, not in agreement or something like that. And that's one of those things that can really throw you off, whether, you're in front of a large group or just in, a fairly casual conversations. And so learning, part of what we do in the art of feminine presence too, is figuring out how to shield yourself, from negative energy. And so I think a lot of times when we have that sort of response or we think somebody's being critical of us, that's when we tend to back off a little bit. We water ourselves down a little bit. And so I just, now it feels really good to sense in myself when I see a potential trigger and I'm like, oh, that's not triggering me right now. I'm still standing in my power and I'm still delivering this message, as strong as I know I can, and not, just watering myself down because I think this person is not in agreement. So it really, it's such an amazing feeling. It's hard to describe, but it is like you've got sort of an invisible protective, barrier around you where you decide, which people and which energy you want to let in.
Okay. And Michelle, describe one personal habit that contributes to your own well-being.
If I had to pick just one, so I would struggle between picking meditation and hot yoga but I'll go ahead and pick my hot yoga practice because that's really important to me and it's a huge part of my self-care. Because it's like a moving meditation, basically.
Yeah. Okay, and what superpower did you discover you had only to realize it was there all the time?
I think it's this, I feel like I'm a contradiction, which is, very compassionate and very strong and powerful at the same time. And so I think my superpower is being able to integrate those two very different characteristics.
Really good. And then what do you do when you get knocked down? Like, how do you protect yourself or come back from something that kind of knocks you down?
I think, one of the most powerful questions I think that anyone has ever asked me, when I'm in a situation, challenging situation is, given what you now have, given your circumstances, what would you like now? Because I think where I would get really stuck in the past is by, wanting to go into the past or, regretting or, trying to prevent it instead of saying, okay, this is happening now, right. Given what I now have to deal with, what do I want moving forward? And I think that, shortens the time in which I stay down so that, I can get up faster.
That's a good one. Okay. And then what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
I think it would just be 4 words. And that would be think less, feel more.
Okay. And then Michelle, do you identify as a feminist?
Yes.
Okay. And then last question, what are you reading right now? Like, what's on your nightstand?
I have a book called Mama Gina's School of Womanly Arts. Do you know it?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet, though.
It's fun, So I mentioned, and I'm also rereading my mentor's book, which is Powerful and Feminine. But Mama Gina, hers is a little less spiritual, a little bit just more fun, kind of about bringing up that flirty, fun, kind of fiery kind of side. And so it's just a really fun, light read, but very related to, tapping into that feminine energy as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being on the program today.
Thank you. This was fun.
Our monthly live event, Well Woman Drinks, brings together women to share our successes and challenges as leaders, moms, aunts, sisters, and all the other roles we carry. If you'd like to attend a Well Woman Drinks near you, or if there isn't one in your city yet and you'd like to start one, email me at info@wellwomanlife.com. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and subscribe in iTunes. And while you're there, leave a review. This helps raise visibility for the show, which is super helpful when it comes to producing the show every week for you. You can also continue the conversation in the Well Woman Life community group at facebook.com/groups/Well Woman Life community. For feedback, comments, or just to let me know you were listening today, find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Well Woman Life. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.